GM friends, and welcome to the future of gaming. This is your weekly blockchain gaming rollup. It's been a hot week. We are recording this on the 2nd of September 2022. We've got Devin Becker, we've got Philip Collins, and we have a special guest today coming in live from Singapore, Ryan Foo, and we have myself, Nico Vereecke. Ryan, what's up, man?
Hi, yeah, doing well. Excited to talk about Limit Break and Digi-Daigaku today. Yeah. But then otherwise, yeah, doing well, man. Happy. Dude.
We have like a sick setup. By the way, this is we have to re-record this because Ryan messed up everything the first recording. Anyway, he's not going to touch his mic, and it's all going to be okay. There we go.
Yeah, we'll be all right.
Good.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
Main topic this week. Lots of things happened, but I think everyone wants to talk about limit breaking fundraising limits, and that's a terrible pun, and I didn't make that up. I blame Devin for that one. So yeah, it seems like they raised $200 million over multiple rounds with, I heard, a last valuation of $1.8 billion. They've been working on something for more than a year. Yes, we want to learn more. Ryan, you have been jamming with Gabe Leydon on Twitter, so maybe you can give some context to people. Maybe start like from the start, because there's not too much to start with. What happened and where are we now?
So I can contextualize like the history, or like this basically a timeline, right? So my understanding is about 12 months ago, Gabe Leydon left MZ, right? I think about 2018 thereabouts. Went to spin out the data science / the real time data, visualization / that data engine, right? Out of MZ. They called it Satori, right? And he was working on that for a while. I think in about 2021, early 2021, late 2020 was when they said like, all right, you're gonna leave and start this company, Limit Break, right? So that was, I think, when they did the seed round. That was also the timing where I believe Patrick O'Shaughnessy on Colossus invited them or Gabe Leydon onto the podcast and talked a bit about like Web3 gaming. Right, talked a bit about like potential of Web3 gaming and the like. So that was my understanding of the timeline anyway. So then the first raise happened, and the second raise, right? So within the span of 12 months, they raised 200 million at a total of 1.75 or 1.8 billion, 1.9 billion valuation in that general, I would say, range, right? So it was only recently, within the last month, that they really ramped up like press. So, the first 11 months was like pure stealth mode. They have 50 employees now, right? Most of them are ex-Machine Zone folks, or hired within the next like the last 3 to 6 months. I would say that they came out with guns blazing about like 24 days ago now to date, right? And that involved the stealth mint of their Digi-Daigaku collection, right? Interestingly enough, it's like 2,022 of them. Same as the year that we're in, right? And there's only 2022 of them, and they're branded as like back then that they didn't have any kind of explanation about what they were, right? They're mystical beings. Daigaku means like college girl, by the way, or college student, I believe, in so Japanese. Oh. Digital college waifus. Yeah. So if not familiar, these are like these 2D JPEGs, right? Of these like cute girls in various costumes. They're like holding lollipops or like microphones, or wearing various clothing, parkas sometimes, of course. Yeah, and depending on the weather. Anyway, enough about that.
Okay. Quick roll call. Who is into anime from you guys?
I've been known to enjoy some anime, but I'm not like far on the spectrum.
Okay.
I've like Attack on Titan and stuff like that.
I burned myself out on it younger, so
okay.
I'm over it for now.
Phil?
No, I've never gotten too deep into it, but I feel like I need to get a little bit more in, just for the sake of feeling more cultured in this space.
Yeah. Like
people ask me like, are you into anime? And I'm like, nah, not really. And then they ask me what my first favorite game was, and then I answer Pokemon. So it's, I don't know, it's kind of mixed, Apparently Pokemon is also anime, which I didn't realize until recently. But anyway, so we have cute little anime girls that are currently at a floor price of, let me answer that in like 1 minute.
$22,000.
How many?
Yeah,
30?
$22,000, I think.
$22,000.
Yeah, it's like 10 ETH or something insane like that. It's about
Yeah.
$22,000. I think at peak it was 17 ETH, which was about $30,000, I believe. $25,000. Yeah. So
I thought
pretty
the point
pretty
of the
insane.
project was not to hype things too much.
Yeah, so it was interesting enough. It was branded as like free to own, right? And so
Mhm.
now I wrote this Twitter thread that got a bit of traction on this idea of free to own, based on like what they wrote in the press release, right? So VentureBeat did a press release with Dean Takahashi, and in this press release they discuss why they did free to own, like how does that change from like traditional free to play model, right? And I think in the basically some of the advantages of that, right? So we can talk through a bit of that, but basically to sort of contextualize the free to own thing, I think identifying three main aspects, right? Free, own, and factory NFTs. Right, the factory NFTs part is not like it's not apparent in the name. Yeah, so it's like free, right? So free stealth mint, the community begins for free. Of course, that creates like some interesting incentives for some have levied criticisms like potential insider like folks being the mint first, or like folks who are just following, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be like the highest value add to the community, for example, right? Which is presumably where you want these NFTs to end up in the hands of. This is one side of things. It might be a marketing thing. Second is the owned angle, right? So I think Web3 gaming, especially we're in Future of Gaming DAO podcast, right? FOGDAO podcast. Definitely that's a very comfortable concept for everyone. Like true digital ownership, right? Like you own your stuff, you can sell it, you can use it. Maybe it's not CCO. Okay, so Digidaigaku has come out against CCO, which is another topic we can talk about. But anyway, moving on from that, the third aspect, which I think is the most interesting from an economy design perspective, is the factory NFT, right? Because I think it does help to answer the question like what is what's the utility of these NFTs, right? Beyond like flexing, or beyond like it's actually a factory that generates like new NFTs, whether be it for like gameplay or for cosmetics, right? So all these NFTs, the promise, at least the weak promise from Limit Break and the team building Limit Break, is that they will aim to drive all the value, or a majority of the value of the game, right? Basically, like whatever players are going to spend on, all or most of that is going to be generated by the holders of the original Genesis NFTs, right? So that helps to answer the question of breaking the limit, right? So I think Devin, nicely enough, he talked about limit break. I'm going to talk about the etymology of limit break, right? Like free reasons. And the fourth one, of course, is breaking the limit of fundraising in Web3 gaming, right? That's one.
Boom.
The second one is limit break is the Final Fantasy term, right? It's like your ultimate ability. So like, when you build up enough energy, you're like limit break, and then like Cloud uses like Omni Slash and like messes up the enemies and the like. And then the third I think is Gabe Leydon and Limit Break wants to break the limit of the most expensive gaming NFT ever, right? And I think like this is kind of the right way to do it, right? You drive all of the value to all the economic value to like the Genesis NFTs, right? I think the main thing is distribution to be better.
Did he mention that he wanted that?
I'm pretty sure this is speculation from me, but
Okay.
The speculation comes from the obsession he has with the question, how do I design a feature that costs $1 million, right? So like, how do you design a feature where a player wants to spend $1 million, right?
That was
And
a
I think,
question
like,
he would
this is
ask
gonna-
in interviews, just to be clear, like to trip people up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha. Sorry.
absolutely. And then the final one on the limit break side of things is to break the limits of how much one player can spend in 1 second. Because, in free to play, right? If you're buying like a microtransaction, a loot box or whatever it is, right? The maximum size that microtransaction can be is 100 USD, right? So like that's the biggest like app store limit that you can pay. But now when you buy an NFT, someone can buy and bought it for $1 million, when they're, excited about it.
Yep.
For reasons
Easy.
that I do not understand. But no, I'm just kidding, I understand. But yeah. So that's kind of like the four, I think, ideas behind Limit Break in the name, which I think is pretty fitting. So yeah, I think I've tried to contextualize it. And so there's the factory NFT side, which I think is really interesting to discuss. And I think where we can go from here is talk about potentially distribution, like where it can be improved. Talk about like the new Spirit NFT thing that he was the first airdrop, right, which is like a bunch of like spirits that you can then combine with your original NFT, and it can become like a royal NFT, it can become a warrior NFT, or it can become a rogue NFT, depending on whether you use the spirit, the original spirit plus the, factory NFT, or the factory NFT plus like another spirit, right? So someone else's spirit. So just like creating more, I guess, all targeted at creating like more transactions, right? Which is kind of the incentive in this setup anyway for the Limit Break Corporation. So yeah, that's a high level overview.
Well, since you're the guest, I want to start by immediately pushing back on some of the things you said.
Excellent.
And start out early.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
the three tenets
I'm
that
merely
you're
a
talking
messenger.
about. Right.
Yeah.
And just to be clear too, Ryan was like shilling these to me like the minute they were available, and like I probably should have at least right clicked if nothing else. But
Dude,
I might have made it mint, but
yeah. So
what can you do?
what's coming now is basically Devin making excuses for him not following
Right.
up on Ryan's.
I'm not a
advice.
bag holder, so I've got to anti-shill basically
Yeah,
at this
there
point.
we
I've
go.
got
Go
to
ahead.
bring down the value
Yeah.
so that I can buy in and then pump my bags after.
This
right?
disclosure, I have 3 of them. Yeah, I have free
Yeah.
Digidagaku NFTs. Yeah.
Did you mint them, Ryan, or did you
Nah.
buy them at? No. Yeah, you
Nah,
were
I
like,
wasn't.
"Dude,
I wasn't that knowledgeable, as some would say. Yeah.
Perfect.
No,
Because that leads
so-
into my first
Yeah.
pushback.
So you know
Yeah.
what happened? I actually got up
I'm
out
exit
of my
liquidity.
couch. So I was
Yeah.
watching Netflix. I'm scrolling through Twitter. I see Gabe Leydon post a link for the mint, and I got up off my couch to mint, but I was too late. But I was down
Wow.
to mint.
That fast?
And then what?
Like minutes.
Yeah.
That
So
fast?
I was
Wow.
like, I saw it 5 minutes after he posted it was gone. So yeah,
That's
I was
crazy.
too slow.
That's all
Wow.
it takes in this world.
But I was down, you know. I got
Yeah.
up off my couch, which doesn't happen too often. So
Yeah. No, especially with that cat you have. Wow.
Should have been minting from your couch.
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Right, Devin, push back.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, the first thing I want to kind of push back a little bit is the way he uses the term free is a little bit misleading, right? It's technically true, but also kind of not true. So it's free in the sense that this initial mint, right, was free, but it was so limited in the number of them that basically you're pretty much buying them secondhand, in which case it's not free, right? It was free for 2,022 people. But it's like when you say free
Probably
to
not
play,
even, right?
All 500
What?
people. Yeah.
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 Yeah, exactly. So it's like when you say like free to play games, right? You don't mean like, well, free to the first 500 people who download the game. No, you mean
Yeah.
free to everyone to play the game and to play it, like, right? So free to own is kind of misleading already right out the gate. Like, I like the idea, but if this is like the actual overall execution, I mean, obviously it could change from here, but the problem is he's trying to like conflate two things, free and own, and the ownership is based off value, and value is not going to be driven by being free, right? Like,
Yep.
and so he's kind
Totally
of like
agree.
setting up a little bit of a paradox right there, right? Like a little oxymoron that he's going to have to deal with. And I understand, right? Like he's a marketing guy. Like this is a marketing thing, and we've already gone through like 5 different acronyms in crypto already. So this is like,
X2
well,
and
why not throw
XN.
one more in? Yeah,
Yeah.
let's just keep going. Let's just keep adding brand new terms because mobile only had free to play. You know, we need more. And so that's the first thing I'd say is like I like the idea, but the free part is a little misleading. I do hope there's more free stuff to come, but if you have to get off your couch in less than 5 minutes to be able to get the free part, probably not so free anymore in that sense. Especially
Yeah.
if you're buying in like at 13 ETH or whatever, it's
Yeah.
about as far from free as you get. So it's like he's talking about, I want to make the most expensive thing ever, but it's free. Like, well,
Yeah.
those two things don't quite
What-
line up.
Yeah, totally agree with you there actually on that pushback, right? I think one way we can kind of improve on the distribution here, like potentially, would be, of course, like having people who contribute early on, like who learn about the project early on, help contribute to it in some way. And it doesn't have to be like direct, right? Like, oh, get 1,000 Twitter followers attributed, to Limit Break, whatever it is. It could just be like creating content or like writing threads, like really nice long threads which are helpful and this. Nah, I'm just kidding. Writing threads like that. And then put them on a list to mint for free, right? And like
Right,
you
but
could
that's still
dribble
not free.
out.
You're still doing work for
you could-
that, right?
Yeah, that's true, I suppose. But
We're
some
getting
people don't see it
semantics,
as
but
well.
it still matters.
Like, I don't know if writing the thread was work. I had like a lot of fun doing it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there was like 2,000. Okay, I guess I also have some of an incentive to do it as well, right? Now that I think about it. So there's like 2,000 of them, but you could also, I think, what would be nice is to see that happen over time, rather than like all at once, and it creates this FOMO-ish behavior, I suppose. Yeah, which is
Right.
something that I
mean,
think could be improved on in future.
If it was
future
truly free to
teams
own, you'd
using
be
this
minting
model.
them in game for free. Like that would be free to own. Is like, okay, I can mint these in game for free, and then I get to own them. That would be truly free to own. But that's clearly not really what's happening, at least right now. Obviously, that could change, right? Like he's been in stealth mode. He's not revealing everything. But I seriously doubt. Like, well, he did say Genesis NFTs, so it's like it's possible that there will be other things that you could mint for free in the game that aren't the Genesis NFTs, because he's clearly said Genesis. In those. So again, it could change. And that's why I want to push back, because I do hope to see it change, that there is maybe some different tiers or different layers to this, and that he's just talking about like this is like one part of it, there'll be more parts and stuff. And so I just don't want us to act like this is everyone's getting free candy out there, and it's like, no, not really yet.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, that's the hard thing with this whole situation is there's so much that we don't know. And I feel like that's a disclaimer to put on this entire conversation where like Gabe has come out and said, hey, I'm not going to tell you everything because I know this is going to get replicated and I'm trying to control the pace at which it happens. And so we're kind of making some fundamental assumptions about what this model will be, which is interesting because in a lot of the press releases I've seen so far, it almost talks about coming full circle back to free-to-play monetization with the truth that you're able to own these assets and what that means in terms of understanding that the distribution of paying players to non-paying players may replicate what we've seen in the past, but the top end of that is where he's really unlocking the cap, or instead of spending $10,000, you're spending $1 million because of the ownership principle. And so what I'm curious with this whole thing is, how different is the model in the end from just traditional free to play? And is it actually that different, or is he trying to prove the point of ownership actually matters from a whale standpoint in terms of how big of a whale they can be? So I don't know how that'll play out, and it'll be unveiled over time, but it's an interesting thought experiment.
I mean, listening to him on some other podcasts and stuff like that, he definitely is pretty bought into at least a lot of the vision of Web3 stuff and ownership and NFTs and community and stuff like that. So, I mean, it definitely sounds like at least he could be going in a better direction. And he sounded pretty bought into the idea that, like, finally that this is less adversarial against players than you are in typical free-to-play, right? In free-to-play, you do kind of act like you're just milking them till their udders are dry as much as possible, whereas this is more like him and the cow are friends, and they're just, I'm going to get a little bit of milk out of you each day, and we're going to be homies.
It's like the goose. Yeah.
Right.
We're going to be homies. You might spend more. Maybe you'll get more people in with me, right? So example would be like using the previous Forex games that they made in the past, right? Like Game of War, for example. Analogy might be that the NFT, and this is speculation, of course, right? The NFT might be a kingdom, for example, right? Or like something that you then get to distribute the produce from, right? So factory NFT produced NFTs, right? Factories and
it's
production.
free land if we're talking about it that way, basically.
Yeah. So it's like then you have to invite people on. You have to bring people on to in order to get the full yield and the full outcome of that NFT, right? And that's kind of where you get the effect of like, well, I have the incentive as a holder, for example, to go and bring people on to play with me, to play this game with me, and then reap the rewards together, right? So that's one potential, I think, path that they could go down. But yeah, Philip, I think the way you contextualize it being like not very different from free to play is helpful, right? Because the thing is that I do think it's not going to be very different from free to play, because they did mention they want to reach hundreds of millions of players, right? That's kind of a very like public ambition that they've made for this Web3 game. So it's going to be interesting to watch at the very least, because one of the main challenges I think most Web3 games have, right? Of course, Axie 800,000 MAUs, the top, right? Step in, not games in the same way that we think of future of gaming, right? We talk of future of gaming.
I hope not.
So I'll discount that. But Axie is probably the most users, right? And then all the rest have like a few thousand, maybe 10,000, maybe a few 10,000 who are playing the games, right? And of course, like many more who aren't playing and just playing the market game, so to speak, right? Which is not the same as playing the game. Yeah, so I think this is a pretty good candidate for getting those players in. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I disagree with that.
Yeah. Ooh,
right.
Especially with 200 million. Yeah.
So one point is, I think Devin, what you said about characterizing this as free, I think I also disagree with that.
Well, you're a loot chiller, so I'm not surprised. It's pretty much the same as loot was in terms of freeness, right? So let's call a spade a spade. It's kind of similar to loot in that sense, right? Like, so I can understand that.
Is this a personal attack on me?
No. I just, that's another one that I missed out on.
It is like loot.
So.
Well, I would say these things are fundamentally different, but I won't go into it because there's enough to talk about here with specifically limit break. From what I've seen from Gabe Leydon, it seems like he's very much focused on like player spending, and he almost sees that as a quantitative measurement of how good he is at game design. And so when you issue something with a collection of 2022 items, and you drop those for free, and you start shilling those like he does on Twitter, like he knows that the price is going to skyrocket. That's like his goal. And so if you're going to do something, you're going to call it free. You're not going to limit the amount of those to 2,000s. It just doesn't make sense. Like for him, I think what he wants to do now is going to pump up the price. He's going to use that as a measurement for how good he is and how much hype there is around the game. But when people complain about it and say it's not free, it's like, oh, but there was a free mint, right? They're making a shit ton. They're making way more money on secondary sales because the mint was free than they would have done if they had sold them for like 0.1 ETH.
It's so smart.
It's from a money perspective and from a revenue perspective, it makes sense. So
to contextualize their monthly revenue, I can give a figure here, right? So in 5,100 or 6,000 ETH, I believe, which is about 9 million USD in a month from secondary market transactions.
Oh, so they're taking a fee right now?
The royalties.
On those, right?
Yeah, royalties. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So royalties.
Wait, so 6,000 ETH in trading volume, right? Of which they have X percent. Do we know the X? How much royalty are they taking?
10%.
That's pretty good profit
which
for
is
giving
really
out
smart.
something for free.
Free mint, 10%. Yeah.
But it's funny because like the mint here, in terms of the dollars coming into the company, is pretty minimal compared to the raise that they just did at 200 million. So I really do feel like at most, Nico, revenue. It's maybe like a quantitative measurement of how much excitement there is for the game, because like obviously you can do a lot with 10 million, but compared to the capital they have available to them, it's a relatively incremental amount.
I agree.
So
but we're talking about
correction,
it, right? which is
900K.
Probably their main goal.
Yeah. It's more like a Kickstarter raise where you didn't necessarily need the money to fundraise for it. It's more like a marketing tactic and proof of concept to make sure you have the audience.
Player buy-in.
Right.
Start the flywheel of player buy-in.
Yeah, I do prefer that model like significantly. If a team doesn't need to raise like from the public and from I think for two reasons, right? One, I'm not a lawyer, but less securities risk, at least lessened, right? I'm not a lawyer, so I can't talk about that very much. Second is I would say, it helps people sort of, at least like people in the community, like if it's executed properly, like people in the community can like benefit from the upside of it without like necessarily anchoring to like a purchase price, right? Because when what we've seen is like when people buy NFTs, they see it as an investment, right? They don't see it as a consumption spend. They don't see it as like, I'm willing to spend $300 to play this game and just like not worry about it going to zero, right? When they see zero, they're like in pain, right? Negative 99% drawdowns and all that. They don't like see it as a consumption spend, right? So I think having a free mint removes that anchoring, right? And by removing the anchoring, only
what
for
about
the
the secondary
instrumenters,
market buyers? You're still in the same situation. You still have to look at your ROI when you're buying it off the secondary.
That's true, but then I think there's less blame on there's less like sort of, you know what I mean?
No, it's a good misdirection for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it also plays into the entire concept of what if in crypto, and I think that's a psychological approach that we've seen over the last year of what if my token with a supply of 10 billion goes up to $1? What if my NFT reaches this whatever 20, 30K price that we're seeing? And it does kind of almost psychologically anchor people in the opposite way, where you're anchoring from zero as an entry point, and there's going to be a lot of people paying attention to whatever the next mint that this collection releases. And
problem is though they're going to be thinking about profit when they try and do it, right? They're going to be trying to race to get in there to the free mint, not because they want to be playing the game, but because they want to flip it. And so you're kind of back in the same situation you were in, but you're again, like Ryan kind of sort of pointed out, you're kind of misdirecting the blame to the secondary market, right? And you're saying like there's just that much demand. What can we do about that, right? People are excited. It's not our fault. People are excited. It's like, no, it's definitely your fault. People are excited. Like this is intentional. Like don't act like you didn't mean to do this. But I am curious if it does have an effect on people's psychology around retaining versus selling. Like so, as like a side story, for example, like I went and played Splinterlands last year when it was like earlier on when people weren't into it as much. It was before the SPS announcement and release, to give some context in terms of timing, and I was just playing because I thought it was kind of cool, and it like part of what got me into like NFT gaming, because I thought it was pretty neat, and I had gotten a card that was like through some of the booster packs. I bought like maybe $50 worth of booster packs at most, right? Like which wasn't a very big spend in the game, and I got a card out of one of those that was a legendary card. For those of you who play Splinterlands, it was Leydon. And it's a legendary card, and it was like, worth $40 at the time. I'm like, cool. And I just played with it, and I thought it was neat, right? And then the price started going up, like once the game hit after SPS, and I started seeing it going up to like 300, 400, and I was like, that's fine. I'm just going to play the game. Like, I enjoy it. I'm not trying to flip for money. But then at some point, I was jokingly like, you know what? If it hits 1,000, screw it. I'll sell it. Like, why not? And it did hit 1,000, and I did sell it, and that was pretty much the peak. And it's now back down to more like 200-300. But it was a situation where it was like it's like the every man has a price kind of thing, right? Where it's like when it's still low price, you could be like, this is fine. I'm going to hold on to it because I think this is cool because I got it for free. Like I don't have to worry about like loss, right? Because I got that Leydon card basically for like $4 or whatever, because that was the price of a booster pack. And but then at some point, like once it hits a certain price, I'm like, well, I'd be stupid not to sell this now. And I imagine once this like these I can't pronounce it, but they hit like a high enough price. Like there's the extra G in there, throws me off. And at some point people are just like, all right, I got to sell this. Like I'm stupid not to sell this at this point too, like because they know it can go back down again as well. So the psychology is complicated. And obviously that's one of Gabe's kind of specialties, at least
that's the fun part.
Coming out of his mouth is psychology. So it's very interesting to watch this in progress.
I mean, talking about psychology, we can dive into like how you use psychology to basically push people to spend more, right? Like get people angry in games, or get people emotional or jealous and the like. So I can talk a bit about that. But I think he's achieved his goal, right? Like the misdirection of sorts. Everyone's highly emotional. It's highly polarizing, right? We are here talking about it. Like people are talking about it on Twitter. On Spaces, he gets attacked, but he handles it all right. And it contributes to if you think again in terms of like CAC, it contributes to the virality factor, right? So the K factor. So people love the word free, but it also angers people like Devin.
I know I'm not angry. I think it's actually a cool project, and I'm very excited about it. Just to be clear, like just because I'm being critical, it's more like not skeptical, but more like I just want to dissect it a bit more.
Yeah,
I got it. Yeah. No, I'm just teasing. Yeah.
I'm gonna make a case. When he says that he wants to have 100 million players, I don't buy it. I'll tell you two reasons.
It's too small.
So one reason is, and I've got this insight from Manu. So Gabe is known for, in early free-to-play, the whole market was focusing on increasing D1 retention, which means that you want players to, once they've downloaded the game, you want a very large percentage of those players to play the game on the next day. And so everyone was aiming for like 40%. And Gabe and Machine Zone, they went completely the other direction. They were totally fine with 20% D1 retention. So half of the players that would play other games the next day would be fine for them. But they would focus really hard on monetizing the thick tail of players that ended up spending like a shit ton of time and money inside the game. And so, the game, the first game of War that he made, or the first big game that Machine Zone made and was famous for, in 2015, so the game came out in 2014 or 15. In 2015, the average revenue per paying user was like $535.
Yep.
And there were some anecdotes of people spending like $1 million, or like stealing their parents' credit cards to spend like tens of thousands of dollars inside that game. And so it's clear that he realizes that's a great way to make money, right? You don't have to focus on that early retention.
1% people happy.
Exactly. Just focus
Like
on
really
those
happy.
whales and milk those fat cows, as Devin would say.
Yeah.
So that's
Or, you know-
the first reason why I'm not necessarily buying his argument that we're going to focus on, we want to get 100 million people playing these games. Like he's known for not caring about how many people play these games, but he's known for caring about if people play my game and they're willing to spend some money, which it seems like they already do. I'm gonna milk the shit out of them, right? So
Actually,
that's argument one.
I'll make
Argument
a
two.
minor correction. Okay, to the
ahead,
argument, I
minor
have a
correction.
slight rebuttal. Yeah. So one context is that ARPPU 550 mentioned for Game of War in 2015, the ARPPU on average for all paying users across games is $80, right? So there's a differential. I would say that also, like, quoting Ramin Shokrizadeh here in one of his articles, but whales don't swim in the desert, right? So they don't play alone. They need, like, the other players as well. Sometimes it can be Deer Hunter online. Sometimes it can be, a sense of stewardship they have over the populace. But there is a kind of relationship between, like, the whale players and the free players. So I do see the 100 million player sort of ambition to be also somewhat valid, right? Especially in a game like Game of War, those kind of games where it's like you need all the other players to kind of support, your pyramid of power, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and Ryan, I was going to go down that line of thinking as well with, like, 100 million. Doesn't necessarily have to be 100 million active players, but just the more signups you get, the more attention it gets, the higher likelihood that you're going to achieve a slightly larger tail and find incremental whales along the way. But
okay,
keep going,
If
Nico.
you can get
Sorry,
100
Nico.
million players, obviously you're going to want to do that. My point is that there's an opportunity cost to everything you do, right? You can either focus on getting as many players into your game as possible, or you can focus on monetizing the shit out of the players that are actually spending inside your game. My argument is that he's proven to do the latter, right? Obviously, like, you want to do both. It's not that he doesn't care about how many players play his game, but I would say that his focus is more about, designing the game so people spend more instead of designing the game so that as many people keep playing it. That's my first
It's like
argument.
a selection bias thing, right? Where, like, he starts with a super wide funnel and then just tightens it very fast. Like, it reminds me of the idea that, like, people always go, why do phishing emails have so many, like, typos and stuff in them? And people are like, why don't they just hire better translators or whatever to, like, because it's worth doing better quality for your phishing emails. And it turned out that basically, like, they actually leave those typos in on purpose because they want to catch people that don't catch the typos, because those are the people that aren't detail oriented, that are sloppy enough to make the mistakes and fall for the fish. And so it's like a selection bias thing where they purposely are setting it up to select, and he's doing the same thing, right? Like, if you stick around past D1 in that game, then you are more of the type of target audience he's hoping for, because he kind of weeded out all the people who weren't likely to spend and just kind of kicked them out of his store early, rather than have them hang around looking at products they weren't going to buy or sampling all the ice cream before they decide not to eat any. It's like that, and I don't know if he'll go that way with this game, right? But, like, that kind of idea, like, does make sense to some extent if your goal is to have very high LTV per player. Like, you do want to select down, right? Because you don't want to spend time trying to placate the free players who are just entitled and complaining why they can't play for, like, 5 years completely for free and have fun every single day. You'd rather be like, get the hell out. Like, you're not paying. Like, we want the whales.
Subtly, with design, with the power of design. Like,
that was
shape it
such a
that they
good
leave.
story. I didn't know that, Devin. I didn't realize that, and that makes a ton of sense. So thank you for sharing that.
I can't tell if you're being sarcastic right now.
No, dude.
No, it's great context. Yeah, it's a great analogy to bring in. I
didn't know
think
that, by the way.
They pulled, like, they're doing the same thing, right? So one fact that Gabe mentioned in the latest space, which was like 5 hours ago, I think, was that he talked about wanting to be number one in Japan, right? So that's one of the ambitions for this game.
Big in
and
Japan.
the second side of things is that I think they're precisely taking that with the anime girls, right? Anime girls in various, clothing attire, apparel, and, with various emotion on their faces and the like. It's like, some people are gonna look at it and be like, come on, nah, and others are gonna be like, wow, I love this, like, this is insane. It's very, like, again, like, wide funnel, and then becomes, like, really tight, right? So, yeah, I'm supporting your point here, Devin.
Maybe it's a certain audience he's thinking too. Like maybe it turns out they're actually like the people that are really into that type of art and stuff. Like actually are the kind of people with the loose enough wallets for them or something. Like there might be a very specific reason besides just being big in Japan that like he wants to target a specific audience. Now, of course, we're kind of taking maybe a little bit of negative view on him too, just based off of his history. Like, and when you listen to him, he does sound very like sincere in a lot of stuff. But we also know like he does have a little bit of a track record. So you just take everything he says with a bit of grain of salt. But I do think like. It will be interesting to see if he's kind of like changed his tune a bit or if this is just like a remix.
So, and the second reason why I find it hard to believe that he's truly going after an initial player base or a player base of 100 million people is the fact that he issued 2,000 NFTs that will be factories for NFTs that have utility within the game, right? If you truly want to have a big player base, I just don't see how it would work when you have 2,000 NFTs that are generating other NFTs that then requires the people that own them actually to sell those NFTs to other players so they can play the game. It just seems and feels so limiting. And so it almost makes it impossible for him to, find a way to get NFTs into 100 million players' hands because he made all these promises, right? People put a shit ton of money inside these initial NFTs, and
he
so
did make those promises.
I just don't see how that plays out.
I got the impression these weren't the only NFTs that were going to exist, though. Like I think there's going to be more Genesis NFT sets. I don't think this will be the only one. I think this was just like the test run one to kind of to get initial interest. I think there probably will be more Genesis NFT mints for other things. I don't think it's going to be limited to 2,000.
I don't think so. Yeah. My speculation is it's going to be like slightly MLME, right? Where it's like you have a downline and then you have like the downline that recruits more. And then there's royalties that flow all the way back up to the top. Cool. Yeah.
Dude,
did
you guys... sorry, this is unrelated.
This is my speculation.
Did you guys read
the
Sets article on
yes.
Web3 is... culture is very similar to Amway or whatever other...
Yeah, MLM stuff.
Yes.
You think about it, MLM's a very
great for growth.
Structure, though. Like it's a good,
very good business, great distribution, which completely solves the distribution problems of Web3, right? I mean, dude, I'm not trying to be an MLM guy. I'm just pointing out the structural similarities.
Dude,
I saw some supplements.
Isn't the whole crypto already freaking Ponzi anyway? So
right, of course,
we're making it more Ponzi.
We're coming up with new terms for Ponzi though. Instead of MLM, now we've got F2O. Right, like we'll keep evolving the terminology as long as it's 3 letters, preferably with a number somewhere in there. Like we can make it happen. But I do want to push back.
Ampersand.
Like, Nico, you do kind of actually like lead to the other pushback that I wanted to make on what Ryan said initially in those 3 kind of things, which is the idea of the factory NFT, right? So I think there's a little bit of and this is the part where I'm not completely sure because I'm having to go off some of the things he said and like some of the things, but without knowing some of the things he didn't say. But when you say factory NFT, right, like the assumption is going to be that it's similar to breeding, in the sense that you can then breed, or to as Ryan understands it, like recruiting in crypto raiders, right, where you're like you don't need 2 of them to reproduce, right? So this idea that like you are a factory now because you have this NFT, you can produce on demand and use it to make profit, or like treat it like breeder DAO kind of thing, like. But all the implications so far is that you don't mint yourself. You can upgrade using that spirit system, right? That's not really a mint. That's more of like an upgrade merge fuse system for what he's talking about so far. And he's used words like airdrop more than anything else. So and controlling the game, company controls the economy. Like the terminology he's used and the way he's talked about it sounds to me a lot more like that limit break is the factory, and all you're doing is putting yourself on like the mailing address list, like. By owning the NFT, like you're just saying like I'm on the list now, and it's more like a complicated whitelist than being an actual factory, because I don't hear anything about minting yourself or reproducing yourself or like breeding or anything so far. Now I could be totally wrong on that just because there's a lot he hasn't said, but everything he said so far to me lines up more with the idea that the company is doing the distribution, not the players, and that the players can then distribute like from what they get, but they're like more like a multi-level marketing thing almost, where they're like getting the product to then shill to their friends and family.
But it almost in that case, and from what I've read on this so far, seems like he's trying to flip the Ponzi structure upside down in a way, where like instead of doing the traditional pyramid, you flip it upside down and you start at the bottom with these exclusive NFTs, and eventually those create more and more, and they're able to manage the supply of what's getting distributed out. Mm-hmm. And so I think they will have more control over inflation, more control over a more
That's absolutely what he's implied
types of
so
structure.
Far.
And so I do think there's something there where, like, if you look at the Axie model, right, and we saw that audience explode, we saw incredibly high revenue numbers coming in per user, and doing that in a more sustainable way, in a way that continues scaling for, I guess, theoretically years to come. That's like always that's what I'm hearing from him so far, is we're going to take that model, but try to make it more sustainable and just run those types of revenue per user numbers into eternity.
And that's why my pushback mostly against the word factory, I guess, right?
Perpetuity.
I'm not necessarily criticizing the way he's doing it. I'm just saying the word factory to me seems to imply things that may not be true.
Mm-hmm.
It's like land versus factory. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
And it's vague enough that it's hard to it's hard to
pin
speculate because it is so vague so far. But that's just the sense that I'm getting.
Right.
So here's two more concrete facts on limit break to reduce the limit on the information that you have. Yeah. So
Ryan's
expand the limit
over there, I think.
Yeah. No, there's two more facts, right? One is that they are building, I believe, a 3D MMO, right? So I think my understanding is they're going to deploy to web. So it's probably going to be WebGL. Yeah, who isn't, right? That's one side of things. The second side of things is that they're building multiple games, right? So they just said this on the Spaces. So not just with the core limit break game, but it's going to be many games which presumably are going to support the NFTs. So that's the other half of some more information, I suppose, that can help to guide our discussion. Yeah.
I would love to know what's happening in the background of this, where, like, when I think about the raise, so go back to the $200 million raise, right? And whatever the valuation was speculated.
I want to see the pitch deck,
man. 1.8 billion. 1.8 billion. I would love to know the structure that this happened within. And, like, I'm just trying to think of how you, like, underwrite the return here. I mean, obviously at the 200 million level raise, some venture firms are underwriting to 10x, some are writing to fund return levels. I'm just really curious to hear, because there was some smart money behind this. This wasn't just a bunch of random groups that came together and decided to give $200 million out. Like this is some pretty smart money in the background. Yeah. And so I'm just really curious, like, what the structure was that got people comfortable with the upside at a near $2 billion entry point. And if there was a crazy structure that was advantageous, or if these groups really just do believe that this is a $50 billion opportunity. I honestly have no idea, and I can't even start to speculate that, but I would love to know what happened in the background there.
Yeah, I want to be on that IC and, like, listen in.
I know. I bet you all wish you'd gotten pitched on the game, right? So that you would at least got to see that pitch deck.
Yes.
What can you say?
To be fair, like, knowing him, like, I can see the seed series and the series seed. I could see a raise there of a nice, like, I could see a good valuation, like up to 50 million for a seed raise. Definitely see that happen. Valuation, by the way. And I mean, because it just makes sense, right? I think a lot of, like, there's different theses around what Web3 brings to games. And one of them is this, this tail monetization, right? Allowing people to spend a shit ton of money inside games, which was always limited or has always been limited. And now that breaks away through this mechanism. And, this guy is famous for building games that have, like, deep economies and incentivize players to spend a shit ton of money. And so, the fit is great. So I can definitely see, the seed argument here. The fucking 1.8 billion valuation, that's a different story.
It's 3x. I mean, it is 3x's last exit. And obviously, venture valuations are very different than actual exits, and somebody saying, hey, you're no longer just theoretically worth this amount. Like, we are willing to buy you out at this amount. Yeah. But, like, 3x's last exit for, a pretty significant company at its maturity.
Well, maybe he's just planning for rapid inflation, like hyperinflation. So the 1.8 billion will actually be like chump change. That's what you'll have to spend at the gas pump just to fill your car up.
Yeah, but why are people throwing this money at him, right? I can understand why he would go for that, but the question is like, who would pay it? And people do, and smart people do. So maybe they already have something really cool. I mean, I've heard rumors that they've got something. Well, he said it on Twitter, right? Yeah. He's like, I have things to back this up with.
Right. Yeah. Well, so to me, like the big thing is like. The problem I've seen mostly within the last year or so of crypto gaming is everyone's so focused on like really stupid stuff like supply or like should I have 1 token or 2 token, these dumb red herrings instead of going like what the hell is my business model? Like how am I going to make money in a way that actually is sustainable and makes sense? Like I'm trying to form a company, not some kind of like hellfire club that's just like screwing around all day. Like and so I think that's what he's bringing to the table in my opinion. That starts to jack up the valuation where he goes, hey, we're not just making a game for the hell of it. Like I'm making like this new business model. I'm going to take advantage of all the stuff I've learned over the years. I'm going to like jack the stuff up. I've proven I could do it before multiple times. And to me, like that's the pitch that sells on it. It's like I figured out the business of Web3. If he can convince people of that, valuation goes pretty high.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that probably more than half of that raise is going to go towards marketing, not the game.
Oh God, knowing him, like it's all going to go towards marketing practically.
Yeah, and I don't think he's shy about that. No. Like I don't think that's no secret.
You got to bring Schwarzenegger back though.
That's not strange for traditional AAA publishing either, right? Like
I like him to hire Kiko Mizuhara to market. Yeah, like some like Japanese like actors and actresses.
Might happen.
Yeah, we kind of.
I've never heard of that name, Ryan. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
And who knows, like.
I am
like
Kiko.
Who knows? Maybe the vision here is no one has had the budget to do what they're going to try to do, right? We don't traditionally see groups at this kind of effectively seed-ish stage have the budgets to say, hey, we're an actual AAA game. We're the first real AAA game that's going to spend $100+ million on marketing, distribution, and getting buy-in from the traditional audience by going in, spending a ton of money on reaching them where they already are and pulling them over to our side. So who knows? I'm not really sure why the entry point was what it was, but hey, I guess if you're gonna go out and do a $200 million raise
at 1.8, you better be a quadruple A.
The dilution isn't too painful for the team, but it's very confusing, but. And on one side, it's confusing, and on the other side, I'm just really curious what smart people thought when they saw this, because they obviously have significantly more information than I do.
It must have been my guess is it was probably like a term sheet written by them where they dictated the val as well, right? So they chose 1.9 bill. They could have chosen 800 mil. They could have chosen 1 bill, but they chose 1.9 bill. So it's of course that raise happened, I think, at November, December period, likely, I think, right, during that period. So
it was said it was over two raises, basically. So it was like 2 rounds.
Yeah, 2 raises.
So it wasn't just like one round.
Well, the first round was, I believe, 11 and 12 months ago. Yeah.
Okay. In conclusion, I want to have from each of you a rating on a scale of 1 to 10. How bullish are you on Limit Break as a game?
Like from where? Good. Like the end. Like bullish at what
success
val?
Of the game.
Like whether it's going to be a successful game that's going to change paradigms and the like. Oh yeah, I'm like a 9 on it. 9.5.
Okay. 9.5. All right. I respect it. Devin?
I'm going to give it 10 just because he really does sound like he'd sell his own grandma to be the #1 game. Like, dude is not kidding. Like, he repeated it so many times in his Twitter spaces that he was going to be the #1 game that, like, if no one else believed it, he definitely believes it. Like, even if he had to convince himself right then, like, dude is, like, it's either going to be
that's how you hire people, though, right?
It's got to be a huge success or a huge failure, and like the worst outcome, in my opinion, is that it's mediocre. So I'm gonna give it a 10, just because like I want to see it, even if it's a big, huge flaming wreck.
Yeah.
All right.
It'll be great to watch either way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I would give it somewhere between an 8.5 and a 9 as well, and I think I'm really heavily being guided by the marketing resources that this thing has. Like, if there's a blockchain game out there right now that can quickly scale, like let's not underestimate the power of marketing, right? I mean, that's when you think about a hit-driven business like video games and the content side of the industry, like marketing is the side that really drives higher hit rates than you'll expect from like a traditional seed stage studio. And so like with 100 million in his hands, 200 million, but 100+ million for him to try to distribute this thing, I mean, it's hard to knock it too hard, even with no context for how good of a game it is. I'm kind of trusting that it'll be a solid game at least, but I mean, with that kind of spending power, it's hard not to think that he can take it a pretty long way.
Good.
Nico?
These numbers indicate that they're gonna do like similar to what Axie did last year, where like everyone was talking about it, everyone wanted to play it, everyone was like willing to spend a shit ton of money to start playing. But then I hope that it sustains for a bit longer than what was it, like a few months. Okay, I'm gonna go a bit more measured. I think I'm gonna give it a 7. 2 reasons. I think one, it's not gonna have mass market appeal. I think what they're gonna do well is they're gonna have like not like a niche, and this could be big, right? But I mean, we currently have a few million players in blockchain gaming, and I think the who's gonna crack that, I don't think it's gonna be them. I think it's gonna be someone else. I actually think Sky Mavis has a bigger chance at cracking that than Gabe Leydon and Limit Break. That's my opinion. Anyway, so I'll give them a 7.
Devin.
Well, yeah, let's also not underestimate Sky Mavis's current resources as well. I mean, that
exactly, they have more money,
substantial.
so
it is very.
If their money's in
substantial,
AXS, I wouldn't say they have more money.
But their
But
last
it depends.
race
Like
was
if we're talking about,
the last race was 150 mil at 3 billion val. I think they'll be all right. Yeah,
Sky Mavis,
anyway. Yeah.
But maybe it's
So-
on the bridge. Who knows?
Yeah.
You know.
You
Too
guys.
soon. Anyway, good, great discussion.
All right.
Yeah,
So
we don't have to talk about anything else. That was good. Final words,
Awesome.
Ryan. Go ahead.
final words. I have a final question because there's a limit break and the success is a game. And second is whether the Daigaku NFTs are a buy or a sell. What do you guys think? At 20k USD.
Sell.
I'll weigh in last. So
Okay, for me that's a sell.
Agree.
NFA, by the way.
I'd definitely go with a sell. Like I'm sure they'll be valuable, and I'm sure they'll be great for the people that need them or want them. But considering we don't really know the real utility yet, and I don't think it's going to be like, wow, I'm so glad I spent 20,000 on it later on. I can't see anyone saying that realistically. I'm gonna have to go with the no or sell.
that's so interesting. Yeah, I have a hypothesis that it's gonna be the most expensive gaming NFT. Like it's gonna be the first gaming NFT that can be sold for $1 million. It's like the best candidate I've seen. Yeah,
For a
just based on the
JPEG?
supply, of course. For the
but all of them or one of them. That's
Just
what
one.
I
Factory,
wonder.
Devin.
That's one.
Because
Yeah,
I was going to
just
say,
one.
because that's what I wonder is like when I think about the risk of buying one of 2022, maybe one of those is going to be a $500,000 NFT, but if
Yeah.
the rest, like, are the,
The rest maybe
all-
like
is the floor
100K.
price going to be up there? Like,
Yeah,
that's where I
'cause-
get a little skeptical.
Yeah, because 100k times 2022, right? That's already like 2 billion, right? Something insane like that. So it's not a lot to grow.
Good.
Yeah.
So, Ryan.
I don't know if my math is right, but yeah. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
What
think-
were your thoughts? So you got some earlier, so cheaper.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're hodling.
I'm hodling, yeah. Hodling. Yeah.
So that means
might-
it's actually a buy for you.
In essence, yeah. I might take profits on one, but let the rest ride out.
Okay.
But we'll see. I haven't done so yet. Yeah.
Good, dude. I'm rooting for you, man.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for you.
If you want to sell me one
Thanks,
cheap,
man.
I will take it dirt cheap, but I'm not gonna lie, I'll take
like
that.
my
That
entry,
always
yeah.
works.
Yeah. You know, the thing is now, like, the cheap has anchored to,
Alright.
like, not free, right? The cheap's anchored to, like, what, 3k or something? Which is still insane.
Hey,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
They were free originally. What do you care how much you make?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Free to own.
All right. Free to own. Devin, Phil, and Ryan, thank you guys so much for joining me here. Great insights. I like this discussion. It was fun, and I'm super curious to see how this turns out. I feel like over the next weeks, we'll probably discuss this some more. I feel like we might get some insights into the game. I don't know. We'll see. In any case,
Dragons.
thank you for being here. Thank you, guys. Thank you, listener, for listening. GN, speak to you soon, and yeah, have a good one. Ciao.
Ciao.